The gunshot that shattered the morning quiet of Silver Creek, Montana Territory, in the spring of 1883 was not meant for Sarah Brennan. But it changed her life forever nonetheless, sending her stumbling backward into the arms of a stranger whose calloused hands caught her with surprising gentleness, and whose gray eyes would haunt her dreams for months to come. Sarah had been standing outside the general store, her hand resting protectively over the small swell of her belly hidden beneath her dark wool dress, when the two drunken miners started their fight. The bullet meant for one of them had torn through the wooden beam just inches from her head, and she had felt her knees buckle, felt the world tilt sideways, felt strong arms wrap around her waist before she hit the dusty ground. "Easy now, ma'am," a deep voice said against her ear, and she found herself being steadied by a tall man in worn denim and a dusty black hat. "You are all right, just breathe." But Sarah could not breathe. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and her hands flew to her stomach, pressing there as if she could protect the tiny life within through sheer force of will. The terror that seized her was not new. It was an old friend, a constant companion that had lived in her chest for 4 months now, ever since she had realized she was carrying another child. The cowboy seemed to sense her panic. He guided her quickly away from the commotion, away from the sheriff who was now wrestling the miners apart, away from the gathering crowd. He led her to a bench in the shade of the hardware store's awning and helped her sit, then knelt before her, his weathered face creased with concern. "Did you get hit?" he asked urgently. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Sarah shook her head, but tears were streaming down her face now, hot and fast. She tried to speak and could not, her whole body trembled. "I am going to get the doctor," the cowboy said, starting to rise. "No." The word burst from her throat, sharp and desperate. She grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into the sun-warmed fabric of his shirt. "No, doctor, please, I just need a moment." He settled back on his heels, studying her with those steady gray eyes. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. There was a gentleness in his face that seemed at odds with the gun belt around his narrow hips and the hard-worn look of a man who spent his life outdoors. "All right," he said quietly. "No, doctor." "But you are shaking like a leaf in a windstorm. Can I get you some water? Something to eat?" Sarah tried to steady her breathing. In through her nose, out through her mouth, the way she had learned to do during the long, terrible hours of her previous pregnancies. The panic was subsiding now, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Water," she managed. "Please." He was back in less than a minute with a dipper of cool water from the pump. Sarah drank gratefully, feeling the trembling in her hands begin to ease. The cowboy waited patiently, his hat pushed back on his head, his expression watchful but not intrusive. "Thank you," Sarah said when she could speak again. "I am sorry for being so foolish. I just got frightened when that gun went off." "Nothing foolish about it," the cowboy replied. "Those idiots could have killed someone with their nonsense. Are you sure you are all right, though? You look awful pale." Sarah almost smiled at his bluntness. "I am fine, truly, I just need to get home." "Where is home?" "The boarding house on 3rd Street, Mrs. Fletcher's place." "I know it." "I will walk you there." "That is not necessary," Sarah protested, but even as she spoke, she was not sure her legs would carry her that far. The fear had taken more out of her than she wanted to admit. "I insist," the cowboy said firmly. He offered her his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Sarah took it. His forearm was solid beneath her fingers, and she found herself leaning on him more than she intended as they made their way down the dusty street. Silver Creek was a rough town, barely 5 years old, built around the silver mines that honeycombed the mountains to the north. It had 2 saloons, 1 church, and a population of mostly single men who came seeking their fortunes and often found only hard work and disappointment. Sarah had arrived 6 months ago from Illinois, a widow with nothing to her name but a carpet bag and a heart full of grief. Her husband James had died of pneumonia the previous winter, leaving her alone and penniless. Worse, she had lost their baby just weeks after his death, her third miscarriage in as many years. The first had come in the second month, barely long enough to call it real. The second had made it to 4 months before her body had betrayed her again. The third, the one that came after James died, had been the worst. She had been nearly 5 months along, and the midwife had said it was a boy. Sarah had fled Illinois after that, unable to bear the pitying looks from the ladies at church or the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. She had answered an advertisement for a seamstress in Montana Territory and had scraped together enough money for a train ticket west. Mrs. Fletcher had given her a small room in exchange for mending and alterations, and Sarah had been grateful for the work, for the distraction, for the chance to start over where no one knew her history. But then, 2 months ago, she had realized she was pregnant again. And the old terror had come rushing back. "Here we are," the cowboy said, stopping in front of the neat white boarding house with its green shutters and swept porch. "Will you be all right now?" Sarah released his arm and turned to face him properly. "Yes, thank you, Mr. Donovan," he supplied. "Cole Donovan, and you are Sarah Brennan. I am grateful for your help, Mr. Donovan." Cole Donovan touched the brim of his hat. "Glad I was there, Mrs. Brennan." His eyes flicked down to her left hand, where she still wore her thin gold wedding band, then back to her face. "You take care now." He was turning to go when Sarah heard herself say, "Mr. Donovan." He paused, looking back. "Do you work in town, or are you just passing through?" She did not know why she asked. Perhaps because his kindness had stirred something in her that had been dormant for a long time, perhaps because she was tired of being alone with her fear. "I work the Johnson Ranch about 5 miles south of here," Cole said. "I come into town most Saturdays for supplies." "Why do you ask?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "No reason. I just wanted to know where to send my thanks should I wish to do so properly." A slow smile crossed Cole's face, transforming it from weathered to handsome. "I will be at church tomorrow morning if you attend. You could thank me there." "I do attend," Sarah said, surprised that he had guessed correctly. "Perhaps I will see you then." "I look forward to it, Mrs. Brennan." This time when he left, Sarah watched him go, this tall cowboy with his easy stride and his kind gray eyes. She pressed a hand to her stomach again, feeling the slight roundness there that would soon be impossible to hide. "Please," she whispered to the tiny life within. "Please stay with me this time." The next morning, Sarah dressed with extra care, choosing her best dress, a deep blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes. She pinned her dark blonde hair into a neat chignon and studied herself in the small mirror above her dresser. At 23, she was still young, but grief had left its marks on her face, a tightness around her mouth, a wariness in her gaze. She made her way to the small white church at the edge of town, arriving just as the bell began to ring. The congregation was modest, perhaps 40 people scattered among the wooden pews. Sarah took her usual seat near the back, nodding politely to Mrs. Fletcher and her daughter Emma, who sat a few rows ahead. She was halfway through the first hymn when she felt someone slip into the pew beside her. She glanced over and found Cole Donovan settling in, a worn hymnal in his large hands. He was clean-shaven now, his hair dampened and combed back, wearing a white shirt and string tie that made him look almost civilized. He caught her eye and nodded, and Sarah felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. The sermon was about faith in difficult times, about trusting in God's plan even when that plan seemed cruel or incomprehensible. Reverend Matthews was an earnest young man from Boston who had come west with dreams of saving souls, and his words were well-meaning if somewhat naive. Sarah listened with only half her attention, acutely aware of the man beside her, of the way his shoulder nearly brushed hers each time he shifted in the narrow pew. When the service ended, Cole walked with her out into the bright spring sunshine. The mountains that ringed the valley were still capped with snow, but down in town, wildflowers were beginning to bloom in patches of yellow and purple. "Would you do me the honor of taking a walk, Mrs. Brennan?" Cole asked. It is a fine day, and I would like to make sure you have fully recovered from yesterday's fright. Sarah hesitated only a moment before nodding. I would like that. They walked through town and out along the creek that gave Silver Creek its name, following a path that wound between cottonwood trees just beginning to leaf out. The water ran high and fast with snowmelt, and the air smelled of wet earth and new growth. How long have you been in Silver Creek? Cole asked as they walked. 6 months, Sarah replied. I came from Illinois last October. That is a long journey for a woman alone, if you do not mind my saying so. I do not mind. It was a long journey, but I needed a fresh start. Cole nodded as if he understood. I came here 3 years ago from Texas. After the war and then some hard years trying to make a go of ranching on my own, I decided I needed a change of scenery too. You fought in the war? Sarah asked, though she could have guessed. Most men his age had. Yes, ma'am. Confederate cavalry, though I am not proud of that fact anymore. I was young and thought I was defending my home. Took me a while after to realize what I was really defending. Sarah appreciated his honesty. Many men she had met still clung stubbornly to the lost cause, unable or unwilling to see the evil at the heart of it. My husband fought for the Union, she said quietly. He died last winter, though not from war wounds, pneumonia. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. They walked in silence for a while, and Sarah found it was a comfortable silence, not the awkward kind that demanded to be filled with meaningless chatter. May I ask you something, Mrs. Brennan? Cole said eventually. You may call me Sarah, and yes, you may ask. Yesterday when that gun went off, you were more than just startled. You were terrified, and not for yourself, I think. Sarah's step faltered. Cole stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression gentle but direct. I do not mean to pry, he said. But if you are in some kind of trouble, if someone is threatening you, I would like to help. No, Sarah said quickly. Nothing like that. I am not in danger from any person. But you are in danger from something. Sarah looked away toward the rushing water of the creek. She had not spoken of her fears to anyone since arriving in Silver Creek. Mrs. Fletcher knew she was a widow, but nothing more. It had been easier to keep her grief and her terror locked inside where they could not hurt anyone else. But standing here in the spring sunshine with this kind cowboy who had caught her when she fell, Sarah found she wanted to speak. Needed to, perhaps. I am with child, she said softly. She heard Cole's quick intake of breath but did not look at him. Could not look at him. My husband has been dead for more than a year, she continued, her words coming faster now. But I was pregnant when he died. I lost that baby. And I had lost 2 others before that. 3 babies, Mr. Donovan, 3 tiny lives that I could not hold on to. Her voice cracked on the last words and tears spilled down her cheeks. And now I am carrying a 4th child and I am so afraid. Every moment of every day I am afraid. When that gun went off yesterday, all I could think was that the shock of it might make me lose this one too. That something inside me would break again and I would have to bury another dream. She was sobbing now, and then Cole's arms were around her, drawing her against his chest. He held her carefully as if she were made of glass, one hand gently stroking her back. I am sorry, Sarah gasped against his shirt. I should not burden you with this. I do not know why I am telling you. Hush now, Cole said, his deep voice rumbling in his chest beneath her ear. You have been carrying this alone for too long, I think. A burden like that gets heavier every day. They stood like that for a long moment, Sarah crying into Cole's shirt while he held her and murmured soothing words. Finally, when her tears had slowed, she pulled back, embarrassed. I have ruined your shirt, she said, seeing the damp patches her tears had left. Shirt's dry, Cole said simply. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Sarah, listen to me. How far along are you now? 4 months, maybe a little more. And have you seen a doctor? Not since I came here. I saw a midwife back in Illinois after I lost the last one. She said my womb was tilted or something was wrong with it, that I might never carry a child to term. Cole was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. I am no expert, he said finally, but I know a bit about difficult births. I grew up on a ranch and I have helped with more than a few mares who had trouble foaling. Sometimes what they needed was not medicine but peace and quiet, no stress, no running around, just calm and rest. I am not a horse, Mr. Donovan, Sarah said, but there was no heat in her words. No, you are not, Cole agreed with a small smile. But the principle might be the same. You have been through terrible loss and grief. Your body has been through trauma. Maybe what you need is someone to take care of you for a change, to help you stay calm and rested, to see you through this. Sarah shook her head. I am alone here. I have no family, no close friends. Mrs. Fletcher is kind, but she has her own concerns. I cannot ask anyone to. You are not asking, Cole interrupted gently. I am offering. Sarah stared at him. What are you offering exactly? Cole took a deep breath as if steeling himself. Let me court you proper. Let me be there for you through this pregnancy. I cannot promise that nothing will go wrong. I am not God and I cannot control such things, but I can promise that you will not be alone. I can promise that I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and calm and cared for, and I can promise that I will pray for you and your child every single day. You do not even know me, Sarah whispered. I know enough. I know you are brave and strong and frightened. I know you have suffered more loss than any woman should have to bear. I know that yesterday when I caught you in my arms, something in my heart recognized something in yours. He paused, color rising in his cheeks. Maybe that sounds foolish. Maybe it is too soon to speak of such things. But I am 30 years old, Sarah, and I have met a lot of women in my time. I have never felt with any of them what I felt the moment I looked into your eyes. Sarah's heart was pounding. Mr. Donovan, Cole, please call me Cole. Cole, she amended. This is madness. You are talking about courting a pregnant widow whose husband has been dead barely a year. What will people say? I do not give a damn what people say, Cole replied with surprising vehemence. Pardon my language, but I mean it. I have wasted too much of my life worrying about what other people think. The war taught me that life is short and precious. If I have found someone worth caring about, I am not going to let propriety or gossip or anything else stand in my way. Sarah searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity or hidden motive. She found none. His gray eyes were clear and earnest, and the set of his jaw spoke of determination. I lost 3 babies already, she said, testing him. I may lose this one too. And even if I do carry to term, there is no guarantee the child will survive, or that I will survive the birth. You could be courting a woman who has only grief to offer you. Then I will pray through this one, Cole said firmly. Every day, every night, I will pray for you and this child. And whatever happens, you will not face it alone. Something broke open inside Sarah's chest, some tightly held knot of fear and loneliness that she had been carrying for so long. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. These were tears of relief. All right, she whispered. All right, Cole Donovan, court me then, but do not say I did not warn you. Cole's face split into a wide grin. He took both her hands in his, lifting them to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. I consider myself warned and entirely undeterred, he said. They walked back to town slowly, still holding hands, making plans in quiet voices. Cole would come into town 3 times a week, on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. On Saturdays, they would spend the afternoon together. On Sundays, they would attend church and take walks. On Wednesdays, he would simply check on her, make sure she had everything she needed. You must promise me something, Cole said as they reached Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house. You must promise that if you feel unwell or frightened or if anything seems wrong, you will send word to the ranch immediately. Day or night, I do not care, I will come. I promise, Sarah said, and you must try to rest more, no working yourself to exhaustion with sewing. Mrs. Fletcher will understand. I need to earn my keep, Cole. Then I will pay your room and board, Cole said. I have money saved, let me do this for you. Sarah wanted to protest, but the truth was that she was exhausted, the work she did for Mrs. Fletcher was not strenuous, but between the sewing and helping with meals and housework, she was on her feet most of the day. And lately she had been feeling the strain of it. We can discuss it, she said finally. "But I will not be a kept woman, Cole Donovan. If you pay my board, it will be a loan to be repaid when I am able." "If it makes you feel better, we can call it a loan," Cole agreed, though his eyes suggested he had no intention of ever collecting. "Now go on inside and rest. I will see you Wednesday evening." Sarah went inside, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She climbed the stairs to her small room, lay down on the narrow bed, and placed both hands over her stomach. "You hear that, little one?" she whispered. "You have a guardian angel now. A tall cowboy with gray eyes who has promised to pray us through this. So you hold on tight, all right. Hold on, and we will get through this together." The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Cole came every Wednesday at supper time, bringing small gifts: wildflowers, a book of poetry, a soft shawl for cool evenings. He would sit with Sarah on the porch of the boarding house, and they would talk about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Texas, about his parents who had died when he was young, about his older brother who had not come back from the war. She told him about growing up in Illinois, about her marriage to James, about her dreams of having a large family someday. On Saturdays, they explored the area around Silver Creek. Cole borrowed a gentle mare from the ranch and taught Sarah to ride, though as her pregnancy progressed, she found sitting a horse increasingly uncomfortable. They switched to taking a buggy instead, driving out to see the wildflower meadows or to fish in the mountain streams. On Sundays, they attended church together, and Cole's presence beside her in the pew became the most comforting part of Sarah's week. Afterward, they would walk or sit in the small town park, and Cole would read to her from the Bible or from whatever book she was currently enjoying. The town gossips noticed, of course. Sarah heard the whispers, saw the sidelong glances. "Mrs. Fletcher asked her gently if she was sure about her growing attachment to Cole, given her recent widowhood and delicate condition. But Mrs. Fletcher was kind, and when Sarah explained that Cole was simply helping her through a difficult time, the older woman nodded and said no more. As spring turned to summer, Sarah's body began to change in earnest. Her belly swelled, and she felt the first flutters of movement that made her catch her breath with wonder and terror. The baby was active, kicking and rolling, and Sarah found herself constantly monitoring each sensation, afraid that the movements would stop. Cole noticed her fear. He noticed everything about her, it seemed. He could tell when she was having a bad day before she said a word. He knew when she needed to talk, and when she needed silence. He learned to rub her feet when they ached and to bring her ginger tea when morning sickness made eating difficult. One hot afternoon in early July, Sarah and Cole were sitting in the shade of the cottonwoods by the creek. Sarah had been quiet for most of their outing, her face drawn with worry. "Tell me what you are thinking," Cole said gently. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I am 5 months along now, further than I ever got with my second baby, but not as far as I got with the third. Every day I wake up terrified that this will be the day I lose him." "Him?" Cole asked with a small smile. "You think it is a boy?" "I do not know. It feels like a boy somehow. Strong kicks, very active." She paused. "My third baby was a boy, the midwife told me after. I have always wondered if that is part of why I could not hold on to him. Maybe my body is not meant to carry sons. Or maybe," Cole said carefully, "those losses had nothing to do with the babies themselves and everything to do with what you were going through at the time. You lost your first two while your husband was struggling with his health, when money was tight and you were under constant stress. You lost your third right after he died when you were drowning in grief. This time is different, Sarah. You are in a better place, you have support. You are taking care of yourself. Or maybe my womb is just broken," Sarah said bitterly. "Maybe I am broken." Cole reached over and took her hand. "You are not broken. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met, and this baby is going to be fine. I feel it in my bones." "You cannot know that." "No," Cole admitted. "I cannot, but I can have faith. And I can pray. I told you I would pray through this pregnancy, and I have kept that promise. Every morning and every night I pray for you and for this child. I pray for strength and health and a safe delivery. And I believe those prayers will be answered." Sarah looked at him, this good man who had come into her life so unexpectedly. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care so much? You could have any woman in this territory, someone without all my trouble and fear and broken parts. Why me?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Do you remember what I said that first day about feeling something when I looked into your eyes?" Sarah nodded. "It is more than that now. I have fallen in love with you, Sarah Brennan, deeply, truly in love. I love your courage and your kindness. I love the way you try so hard to be strong even when you are terrified. I love your laugh, which I do not hear often enough. I love the way you put your hands on your belly when you think no one is watching, as if you are trying to hold your baby safe through sheer will alone." He paused, meeting her eyes. "I love you, and I love the child you are carrying, and I want to spend the rest of my life taking care of you both. If you will let me." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "Cole, I cannot ask you to take on another man's child. You are not asking, I am offering. And besides, if this baby is born healthy, I will be the only father he or she ever knows. I will raise this child as my own, love him as my own. That is a promise." "What if I lose him?" Sarah whispered. "What if, despite everything, I cannot carry to term?" "Then we will grieve together," Cole said simply. "And when you are ready, if you want to try again, we will try together. As husband and wife, if you will have me." Sarah's breath caught. "Are you proposing to me?" "Not officially, not yet. You are still in mourning, and I know it would not be proper, but I am telling you my intentions. When enough time has passed, when you feel ready, I am going to ask you to marry me, and I hope with everything in me that you will say yes." Sarah threw her arms around him, holding on tight. "I do not care about propriety," she said fiercely. "I do not care what anyone thinks. I love you too, Cole. I think I have loved you since you caught me that first day. You made me feel safe for the first time in years." They held each other for a long time, the summer heat and the sound of the rushing water wrapping around them. When they finally pulled apart, Cole cupped Sarah's face in his hands and kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. "We are going to get through this," he murmured against her lips. "All three of us, I believe it with everything I am." For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to believe it too. The next months were not easy. As Sarah's pregnancy advanced, so did her anxiety. She was constantly on edge, interpreting every twinge and ache as a sign of impending disaster. She grew superstitious, refusing to let Mrs. Fletcher prepare a cradle or baby clothes, certain that any preparation would jinx her chances. Cole was patient with her fears. He never dismissed her worries or told her she was being foolish. Instead, he listened and reassured and prayed. He convinced her to see the doctor in town, a gruff older man named Dr. Morrison, who examined her and declared that everything seemed normal. "Your baby has a strong heartbeat," Dr. Morrison told her. "You are carrying well. I see no reason to expect complications." But Sarah could not shake her dread. She was 6 months along, then 7, further than she had ever made it before. Her belly was round and tight, and the baby kicked so hard sometimes that it took her breath away. Cole would place his hand on her stomach and feel the movements, his face full of wonder. "He is strong," Cole would say, "or she is. This little one is a fighter." In late August, when Sarah was approaching 8 months, she woke in the middle of the night to a sharp pain in her lower back. She lay still, heart pounding, waiting for more pain to come. When it did not, she tried to tell herself it was nothing, but the fear was overwhelming. She got out of bed and made her way downstairs, intending to brew some tea to calm her nerves. But halfway down the stairs, she felt a gush of warm liquid between her legs. She looked down and saw blood staining her nightgown. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Her legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the stairs, pressing her hands to her stomach. "Please," she sobbed. "Please do not take this baby too, please." Mrs. Fletcher found her there a few minutes later, woken by the sound of crying. She took one look at the blood and went pale. "Emma," she called up the stairs. "Fetch Dr. Morrison, now." Then she helped Sarah back up to her room, speaking in soothing tones that Sarah barely heard over the roaring in her ears. This was it. This was the end. She was losing another baby, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Doctor Morrison arrived within the hour, his hair standing on end, his medical bag in hand. He examined Sarah while Mrs. Fletcher held her hand and murmured prayers. "The baby is still alive," Dr. Morrison said finally. "The heartbeat is strong, but you are bleeding, which is concerning. You need to stay in bed, Mrs. Brennan. Complete bed rest for the remainder of your pregnancy. No getting up except to use the chamber pot. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I want Cole," she whispered to Mrs. Fletcher. "Please, I need Cole, Mrs." Fletcher looked at the doctor, who nodded. "Send for him," he said. "She needs to stay calm, and if this Cole fellow helps with that, then I want him here." Emma was dispatched to the Johnson ranch with a note. She returned 2 hours later with Cole riding hard behind her. He took the stairs to Sarah's room 3 at a time and burst through the door, his face white with fear. "Sarah," he breathed, crossing to her bedside in 2 strides. "I am losing the baby," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "Just like before, I am losing him." "No," Cole said firmly. He sat on the edge of the bed and gathered her into his arms. "No, you are not. Dr. Morrison says the baby is fine, you just need to rest." "There was so much blood," Sarah said, shaking. "I know, but sometimes these things happen and the baby is still all right. You have to have faith, Sarah. You have to believe that this time will be different." Over the next week, Cole barely left Sarah's side. He slept in a chair by her bed, brought her meals, read to her, and prayed with her. The bleeding stopped after 2 days, and Dr. Morrison declared that the crisis had passed. "But you must continue bed rest until the baby comes," he warned. "Another month, maybe 6 weeks if the baby decides to be late. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded. She would do anything to give her child a chance at life. Cole arranged with Mr. Johnson, the rancher who employed him, to take a temporary leave. Mr. Johnson, a kindly older man with 7 children of his own, agreed immediately. "You take care of your lady," he told Cole. "The work will be here when you get back." So Cole moved into Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house, taking a small room down the hall from Sarah's. He became her constant companion, her source of strength. When she woke in the night panicked and convinced something was wrong, he was there to calm her. When she grew restless and frustrated with being confined to bed, he distracted her with stories and jokes and plans for the future. "When the baby comes, and you are both healthy," Cole said one afternoon, "I want to marry you, not a big wedding if you do not want that. But something proper with the reverend and witnesses. I want you to be my wife, Sarah." "I want that too," Sarah said, reaching for his hand. "More than anything." As September arrived and Sarah entered her 9th month, she was a bundle of nerves. Every twinge made her think labor was starting. Every quiet moment made her fear the baby had stopped moving. Cole remained calm, or at least pretended to, for her sake. "You are doing beautifully," he would tell her. "Just a little longer and we will meet this baby." On a cool evening in mid-September, Sarah felt the first real contraction. It was different from the false alarms she had experienced over the past weeks. This was deep and strong, a tightening that took her breath away. "Cole," she said, gripping his hand. "I think it is time." Cole went pale but nodded. "I will get the doctor, doctor." Morrison arrived with a midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Jennings who had delivered half the babies in Silver Creek. They examined Sarah and confirmed that she was indeed in labor. "It will be a while yet," Mrs. Jennings said kindly. "First babies usually take their time. You just breathe through the pains, dear, and we will be right here." Cole wanted to stay, but Mrs. Jennings shooed him out. "This is women's work," she said firmly. "You wait downstairs with Mrs. Fletcher. We will call you when the baby is born." Cole looked at Sarah and she saw the fear in his eyes that matched her own. "I love you," he said. "Both of you, you are going to be fine." "I am so scared," Sarah admitted. "I know, but you are also strong, stronger than you know. You can do this." He bent and kissed her forehead. "I will be right downstairs, praying every second." The labor was long and painful. Sarah had nothing to compare it to except her previous losses, which had been shorter, sadder affairs. This was different. This was her body working to bring a living child into the world, and it was brutal and exhausting and terrifying. She lost track of time. The contractions came in waves, each one stronger than the last. Mrs. Jennings coached her through, telling her when to push and when to breathe. Dr. Morrison monitored the baby's heartbeat, his face serious but not alarmed. At some point deep in the night, Sarah became convinced she was dying. The pain was too much, too overwhelming. She could not imagine surviving it. "I cannot do this," she gasped. "I cannot." "Yes, you can, Mrs. Jennings said firmly. "The baby is almost here, dear, just a few more pushes." "The baby," Sarah repeated. "Is the baby all right?" "Strong heartbeat," Dr. Morrison confirmed. "Keep going, Mrs. Brennan." Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Cole downstairs, pacing and praying. She thought of the 3 babies she had lost, the 3 tiny souls who had never drawn breath. She thought of the child fighting to be born right now, the child who had survived 8 months in her difficult womb, who had held on through bleeding and fear and bed rest. "All right," she said, gathering her strength. "All right, I can do this." With a final, desperate push, she felt the baby slide free. There was a moment of terrible silence, and then the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard, a baby's cry, thin and reedy but unmistakably alive. "It is a boy," Mrs. Jennings announced, holding up the squalling, red-faced infant. "A healthy baby boy," Sarah was crying and laughing at the same time. "Is he really all right? Is he truly healthy?" Dr. Morrison was examining the baby with quick, practiced hands. "He is perfect," he said, smiling for the first time that Sarah could remember. "Good weight, good color, all his fingers and toes. Well done, Mrs. Brennan." Mrs. Jennings cleaned the baby quickly and wrapped him in a soft blanket, then placed him in Sarah's arms. Sarah looked down at her son, at his scrunched-up face and flailing fists, and felt her heart break open with love. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mama, and I have waited so long to meet you." The baby quieted at the sound of her voice, his tiny eyes opening to reveal a deep blue gaze. He looked at Sarah as if he knew her, as if he had been listening to her voice for months and was glad to finally see the face that went with it. "Can Cole come up now?" Sarah asked. "Please." "I want him to meet his son," Mrs. Jennings smiled. "I will fetch him." A moment later, Cole burst into the room. He stopped short when he saw Sarah holding the baby, his eyes going wide. "Is he?" Cole could not seem to finish the sentence. "He is perfect," Sarah said, her voice choked with tears. "Cole, we have a son, a healthy, perfect son." Cole crossed to the bed slowly, as if in a dream. He looked down at the baby in Sarah's arms, and tears began to roll down his weathered cheeks. "Can I hold him?" he asked, his voice rough. "Of course." Sarah placed the baby in Cole's arms, showing him how to support the tiny head. Cole held the infant with surprising ease, his large hands gentle and sure. "Hello there, little man," Cole said softly. "I am Cole. I am going to be your papa if that is all right with you." The baby made a small sound, and Cole laughed, the sound wet with tears. "I am going to take that as a yes." He looked up at Sarah, his face full of wonder and joy and love. "You did it," he said. "You brought him safely into this world. I am so proud of you, Sarah, so incredibly proud." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "I could not have done it without you. You kept me calm and gave me hope when I had none. You prayed us through just like you promised." "I guess God was listening," Cole said, looking back down at the baby. "What are you going to name him?" Mrs. Jennings asked. Sarah had thought about names during her long months of bed rest, but she had been too superstitious to settle on one. Now, looking at her son in Cole's arms, she knew. "James," she said, "for my first husband who should have been here to meet him, and Cole for the man who will raise him." "James Cole Brennan." Cole's eyes met hers, bright with tears. "That is a fine name," he said. "The finest name a boy could have." The next few weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion and joy. Baby James was a good baby, healthy and hungry, with a strong cry that he used liberally in the middle of the night. Sarah was sore and tired, but she had never been happier. Every time she looked at her son, every time she held him and felt his warm weight in her arms, she marveled that he was real, that he was here, that her body had finally done what it was meant to do. Cole was besotted with the baby. He helped with everything, changing diapers and walking the floor when James was fussy and singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. He moved out of Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house and back to the ranch, but came into town every single day to visit. One morning in early October, Cole arrived at the boarding house dressed in his Sunday best. He found Sarah in the parlor, rocking James by the window. "You look nice," Sarah said, smiling at him. "Are we going somewhere?" "We are," Cole said, "if you are up for it." "I thought we might take a walk to the church." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "It is not Sunday." "I know, but Reverend Matthews said he would be there this morning, and I thought if you were amenable we might get married today." Sarah's breath caught. "Today, I know it is sudden." "But Sarah, I do not want to wait anymore. I want to be your husband. I want to make James legally my son. I want us to be a real family." He paused, then got down on one knee beside her chair, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Sarah Brennan, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. It was not fancy, but it was beautiful. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her soundly. Baby James, disturbed by the movement, let out a small cry of protest, and they both laughed. "Let me change into something nicer," Sarah said, "and we should bring Mrs. Fletcher and Emma as witnesses." An hour later, Sarah stood in the small church wearing her best dress, a soft green calico that she had altered to fit her post-pregnancy body. She held James in her arms, and Cole stood beside her, tall and handsome in his dark suit. Mrs. Fletcher and Emma sat in the front pew beaming. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony, his young face serious with the weight of the occasion. When he asked Cole if he took Sarah to be his lawfully wedded wife, Cole's voice rang out strong and sure. "I do, with all my heart." When he asked Sarah the same, she looked at Cole, at the man who had saved her in so many ways, and said, "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride." Cole kissed her gently, mindful of the baby between them, and Sarah felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Belonging. Home. After the ceremony, they went back to Mrs. Fletcher's for a small celebration. Mrs. Fletcher had baked a cake and Emma had picked wildflowers for the table. It was simple and sweet, exactly what Sarah wanted. "So what happens now?" Mrs. Fletcher asked as they ate cake and drank tea. "Will you be moving to the ranch, Sarah?" Sarah looked at Cole. They had not discussed it yet. "Mr. Johnson has a small house on his property," Cole said. "It is just 2 rooms and needs some fixing up, but he said we could live there. I thought we could move in this week and spend the next months making it a real home." "A house of our own," Sarah said wonderingly. "James, do you hear that? We are going to have a house." The baby, who had been sleeping peacefully in her arms, did not respond. They moved into the little house 3 days later. It was rough, as Cole had warned, with gaps in the floorboards and windows that did not quite close all the way. But it had a good roof and a stone fireplace, and Cole set about making repairs immediately. Sarah made curtains and cleaned and arranged their few pieces of furniture. Cole bought a cradle from a carpenter in town, and Sarah sewed blankets and little gowns for James. Slowly, the house became a home. The winter came early that year, with snow falling in thick white curtains by November. Sarah was glad to be inside, warm and safe with her husband and son. Cole worked hard on the ranch during the day but always came home at night, no matter how tired he was. He would wash up at the pump, then come inside and scoop James out of his cradle, talking to the baby about his day as if the infant could understand. Sarah loved watching them together. Cole was a natural father, patient and gentle and utterly devoted. He changed diapers without complaint and got up in the middle of the night to bring James to Sarah for feeding. He sang the baby to sleep and made silly faces to elicit gummy smiles. "You are so good with him," Sarah said one night as they sat by the fire, James asleep in Cole's arms. "He is an easy baby to love," Cole replied, "just like his mama." "I still cannot believe he is here," Sarah admitted, "that he is healthy and thriving. Some days I wake up convinced it was all a dream." "It is real," Cole assured her. "We made it through, Sarah, all three of us." "Because of you, because you had faith when I could not." Cole shook his head. "We made it through because you are strong and because God answered our prayers. I was just the fellow who held your hand." Sarah reached over and took his free hand now, lacing their fingers together. "You are so much more than that. You are my husband, James's father, and the best man I have ever known." Cole brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I love you, Sarah Donovan. I love you too." As winter deepened, life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Cole worked, Sarah kept house and cared for James, and in the evenings, they were a family. Mr. Johnson and his wife came to visit and brought gifts for the baby. The ranch hands stopped by to coo over little James and congratulate Cole on his marriage. Christmas came, and Cole cut a small pine tree that they decorated with strings of popcorn and paper stars. Sarah had never been happier. She had a husband who loved her, a son who was healthy and growing, and a home. After so much loss and fear, she had finally found peace. One snowy evening in January, as they sat by the fire after putting James to bed, Cole brought up a subject they had been dancing around for weeks. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I have been thinking about the future, about our family." "What about it?" "Well, James is 4 months old now and he is doing so well, and I was wondering how you felt about having more children. Someday, I mean, when you are ready." Sarah was quiet for a moment. The old fear tried to rise up in her chest, but it was muted now, dulled by months of having James safe and healthy in her arms. "I think I would like that," she said slowly. "Not right away, but someday I would like James to have brothers and sisters." "And you are not afraid?" Cole asked gently. "Oh, I am terrified," Sarah admitted. "I will probably be terrified through every pregnancy for the rest of my life, but I am also hopeful now in a way I was not before. You taught me that faith can carry you through the darkest times. And I have faith that whatever the future holds, we will face it together." Cole pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Together," he agreed, "always together." The years that followed were good ones. James grew into a bright, curious toddler with his mother's blue eyes and his father's easy smile. When he was 2 years old, Sarah became pregnant again. She was nervous, but Cole was there every step of the way, just as he had been before. Their second son, Thomas, was born healthy and strong in the spring of 1886. 2 years after that, they welcomed a daughter, Lily, who had Sarah's blonde hair and Cole's gray eyes. And 2 years after Lily, another daughter, Emma, named for Mrs. Fletcher's daughter who had become a dear friend. With each pregnancy, Sarah's fear lessened. Her body had proven itself capable, and her faith had grown strong. She still said a prayer of thanks every night for the children sleeping safely in their beds, but the terror that had once consumed her was gone, replaced by gratitude and joy. The little 2-room house became too small, so Cole built an addition, adding bedrooms and a proper kitchen. He proved to be a skilled carpenter, and the house grew over the years into a comfortable home filled with laughter and love. Mr. Johnson, who had no sons of his own, made Cole his foreman and eventually his partner. When the old rancher died in 1892, he left the ranch to Cole, who had become like a son to him. Cole renamed it the Brennan Donovan Ranch, and it prospered under his care. Sarah took in sewing and sold eggs and butter in town, not because they needed the money, but because she liked having her own small business. She taught Lily and Emma to sew, just as her own mother had taught her, and took pride in watching her daughter's skills develop. James grew tall and strong with a gift for working with horses. Thomas was the scholar of the family, always reading and asking questions. Lily was creative and imaginative, forever putting on plays and concerts for the family. Emma was the practical one, organized and capable beyond her years. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole took Sarah on a picnic to the spot by the creek where they had first confessed their love for each other. The children stayed with Mrs. Fletcher, who was now like a grandmother to them. You remember that day? Cole asked as they sat on a blanket in the shade of the cottonwoods. When you told me you had lost 3 babies and were afraid of losing a 4th, I remember, Sarah said. I was so frightened, I thought my life was over before it had really begun. And I promised to pray you through it. You did, and you kept that promise. You prayed us through not just that pregnancy, but through everything that came after. Cole took her hand, his thumb tracing the gold band on her finger. It has been the greatest honor of my life to be your husband and the father of your children. When I caught you in my arms that day outside the general store, I had no idea that you would become my whole world. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Cole Donovan, more than I could ever find words to say. I love you too, Sarah, today, tomorrow, and always. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the creek and the birds and the wind in the trees. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here, from terror and loss to love and abundance. She thought about the 3 babies she had lost, who would always hold a place in her heart, and the 4 living children who were her greatest blessing. She thought about faith and prayer and the power of having someone believe in you when you could not believe in yourself. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For catching me when I fell, for holding me when I cried, for praying when I could not, for loving me and James and all our children, for building this life with me. She lifted her head to look at him. For everything, Cole, for absolutely everything. Cole cupped her face in his hands and kissed her gently. It has been my privilege and my joy, he said. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains gold and rose, they packed up their picnic and rode home. The little house on the Brennan Donovan ranch was alight with lamplight, and through the windows, they could see their children moving about inside. James was setting the table, Thomas was reading in a corner, and Lily and Emma were playing some elaborate game that involved much giggling. Look at what we made, Cole said, his arm around Sarah's waist as they stood looking at their home. Look at this beautiful life we built together. It is beautiful, Sarah agreed. More beautiful than I ever dreamed possible. They went inside to their waiting children, to the warmth and noise and love that filled every corner of their home. And Sarah, who had once thought herself broken beyond repair, gave thanks for the cowboy with gray eyes who had promised to pray her through, and who had kept that promise every day since. Years later, when Sarah was an old woman with silver in her hair and grandchildren climbing on her lap, she would tell them the story of how she met their grandfather. She would tell them about fear and faith, about loss and love, about a gunshot on a spring morning and a tall cowboy with gentle hands. I lost 3 babies already, she would say, her voice still catching on the words even after all those years. And I was so afraid of losing a 4th. But your grandfather, he looked me in the eye and said, then I will pray through this one, and he did. He prayed us all through, your grandfather, and here we all are, his answered prayers. The children would lean against her, soaking in the story, and Sarah would look over their heads to where Cole sat in his rocking chair, still strong despite his years. He would meet her eyes and smile, and in that smile she would see everything they had built together, every prayer answered, every fear overcome, every promise kept. Their love story was not easy or simple. It had been forged in grief and fear, tested by hardship and uncertainty. But it had endured, growing stronger with each passing year, until it became the foundation upon which an entire family was built. And on quiet evenings, when the house was full of children and grandchildren, when the table was crowded with loved ones and the air was filled with laughter, Sarah would sometimes catch Cole's eye across the room. He would wink at her, and she would remember the young widow who had stumbled into a cowboy's arms and the promise that had changed everything. Then I will pray through this one. It was a promise that had become a legacy, a testament to the power of faith and love and the simple act of being there for another person when they needed you most. It was a promise that had given Sarah her life back, that had given James and Thomas and Lily and Emma their existence, that had created a family where once there had been only loneliness and loss. As Sarah sat in her home, surrounded by the evidence of answered prayers, she sent up one of her own, a prayer of gratitude for the cowboy who had caught her when she fell and had never let her go. A prayer of thanks for every moment they had shared, every child they had raised, every hardship they had overcome together. And somewhere in the heavens, she believed, God was smiling, pleased with the work he had done in bringing two broken souls together and making them whole. The Brennan Donovan Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each one adding to the legacy that Cole and Sarah had started. The little house grew into a large homestead, and the family tree expanded until it had roots throughout Montana territory and beyond. But it all started with a promise made on a spring day in 1883 when a frightened young widow told a cowboy about her deepest fear, and he responded with faith and love and a determination to see her through. "Then I will pray through this one." Those words became the cornerstone of their marriage, their family, and their life together. And Sarah never stopped being grateful for the day God sent a tall cowboy with gray eyes to catch her when she fell, in every possible way. Their story was one of redemption and hope, a reminder that even the deepest grief can give way to joy, that even the most broken hearts can heal, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a simple act of kindness and a promise to never let go. Cole and Sarah Donovan lived long, full lives, surrounded by children and grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. They died within months of each other, both in their 80s, having spent more than 50 years as husband and wife. At Cole's funeral, James, now a gray-haired man himself, stood to speak about his father. He told the story of how Cole had loved him before he was born, how he had prayed him into existence, how he had been the only father James had ever known. "My father once made a promise to my mother," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "He promised to pray her through a pregnancy that terrified her, and he kept that promise. But more than that, he kept on praying. He prayed through every day of their marriage, through every challenge our family faced, through every joy and sorrow. He taught us that faith is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. He taught us that love is a choice you make every single day. And he taught us that prayer is not just words spoken to God, but actions taken in faith." When Sarah followed Cole a few months later, it was James who found the small leather journal she had kept for all those years. In it, she had written down every prayer Cole had prayed, every promise he had kept, every moment of grace they had shared. The last entry, written just days before she died, reads simply, "Thank you, God, for answering my prayers. Thank you for Cole, for our children, for this beautiful life. Thank you for catching me when I fell and for never letting me go." The journal became a treasured family heirloom, passed down through generations, a reminder of where they had come from and the faith and love that had made their family possible. And on quiet evenings, when the descendants of Cole and Sarah Donovan gathered together, someone would always tell the story of the frightened young widow and the cowboy who promised to pray her through. They would tell it to their children and their children's children, ensuring that the legacy of faith and love that had started on a spring morning in Silver Creek, Montana territory, in 1883, would never be forgotten. It was a story of loss and hope, of fear and faith, of the power of a promise kept and a prayer answered. It was the story of Cole and Sarah Donovan, and it was a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth living by. Because in the end, that is what love is. A promise to stand with someone through their darkest fears, to believe in them when they cannot believe in themselves, and to pray them through one day at a time until the fear gives way to joy and the darkness gives way to light. And that, more than anything else, is what Cole and Sarah Donovan taught their family. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the simple, daily act of choosing each other, of keeping their promises, and of never giving up on the power of faith and love to transform even the most broken hearts into something beautiful and whole. Their story ended, as all stories must, but their legacy lived on in every child born to their descendants, in every promise kept, in every prayer spoken, and in every act of kindness and faith that rippled out from that first promise made on a spring day so long ago. Then I will pray through this one. 7 words that changed everything, 7 words that built a family. 7 words that proved that sometimes the greatest love stories are not about grand passion or dramatic rescues, but about showing up every day, keeping your promises and believing in the power of faith and love to see you through. And in the end, is that not what we all need? Someone to pray us through, to believe in us, to catch us when we fall, and to never let us go. That is what Cole gave Sarah, and what Sarah gave back to him tenfold. That is the legacy they left behind, and it is a legacy worth celebrating, worth honoring, and worth passing on to every generation that follows. The tale of Cole and Sarah Donovan became legend in Montana, a reminder that even in the hard, rough world of the frontier, love could flourish and faith could move mountains. Their ranch still stands today, over a century later, run by their great-great-grandchildren, who still tell the story of how it all began. And on spring mornings, when the wildflowers bloom and the creek runs high with snowmelt, you can almost feel their presence there, the young widow and the cowboy, walking hand in hand through the cottonwood trees, their love echoing through time, a testament to the power of faith, hope, and a promise kept.